I never thought managing a team of 12 would plunge me into such a bizarre mess. When I took on the 13th member, a tough case rejected by other managers, I was confident I could help him. But from a security breach to bullying accusations and a demand to bring a cat to the office, it spiraled beyond imagination. Then came a fake lawsuit letter, leaving me wondering, how did a simple effort to support someone end in such madness? What on earth happened? I was managing a team of 12 people, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, but overall, the team operated smoothly under my leadership. Then, one day early last year, I received word from higher-ups that a 13th member would be joining us. This was unusual since my team was already fully staffed. It turned out this person was a special case that no other manager in the company wanted to take on. He had worked under 3 different departments before, but each time he was passed off because no one could handle the issues he brought with him. Finally, the big boss decided to assign him to me, citing my track record of successfully supporting employees with mental health challenges in the past. When I first met him, my initial impression wasn't exactly positive. He was diagnosed with depression and generalized anxiety disorder, officially documented by a doctor. On top of that, he was morbidly obese, his heavy frame visibly straining as he moved, and he suffered from musculoskeletal problems caused by his weight. To make matters worse, he had type 2 diabetes, a condition requiring regular medical attention. I told myself this would be a tough challenge, but instead of refusing like the other managers, I agreed to take him on. I believed that with my experience, I could help him integrate and improve, just as I had done with other staff members before. In the early days, I spent a lot of time getting to know his situation. I noticed he was often lethargic, lacked motivation, and sometimes got irritable when assigned tasks. Still, I didn't give up. I started by giving him simple, light duties that matched his capabilities, while encouraging him to speak up if he struggled. Gradually, I saw some progress, not much, but enough to give me hope. I slowly increased his workload, though it never reached the level the company deemed acceptable. To help further, I sourced specialized equipment, like an oversized ergonomic chair and an adjustable height desk, to make him physically more comfortable, especially since his weight made sitting for long periods difficult. I also made time to talk to him one-on-one, not just about work but about his health and emotions, hoping to build trust. Once he opened up about the pressures in his personal life, and I listened, nodding, trying to show empathy. I felt like we were on the right track, even if it was a slow one. I even told myself that with patience, I could help him not only perform better at work, but also improve his life overall. That was the goal I set, and I genuinely believed I was making a positive difference. After those initial months working with him, I felt we had made some progress, however small. He was starting to get accustomed to the pace of work I had carefully adjusted to suit his health condition, and I still held on to the belief that with time, he could improve further. I had gone out of my way to create a supportive environment, from providing specialized equipment to regularly checking in to see if he was okay. But then, a serious incident happened, throwing everything I had built into disarray. One afternoon, while I was reviewing the team's reports, I received an urgent email from the company's legal department. They informed me that a batch of sensitive personal information had been mistakenly sent to a third party with no legal right to access it. I immediately investigated and discovered that he was the one responsible. He had, whether accidentally or intentionally, I wasn't sure, sent an entire data set of customer details, including names, addresses, and phone numbers, to an external email he mistook for a colleague's. This wasn't just a minor slip-up, it was a severe security breach that could expose the company to significant legal consequences. I had no choice but to place him under formal disciplinary action. I called him into a meeting room to explain the situation. He sat there, sweating profusely, his trembling hands resting on the table. I tried to keep my tone calm, explaining the gravity of the matter and that this was a necessary process to protect the company. But the moment I mentioned the word disciplinary, he became frantic, claiming the pressure of the job had clouded his judgment. I felt a pang of guilt, but I couldn't overlook this mistake. After the meeting, He requested sick leave immediately, citing unstable mental health. I agreed, thinking he needed time to cool off. But he didn't come back. 1 week turned into 1 month, then stretched into over 3 months of continuous sick leave. I started receiving notices from HR that he had exceeded the allowable leave threshold and was now subject to attendance management procedures. During that time, I heard rumors that he had reached out to a local mental health support group. At first, I thought it was a positive sign. Maybe he was trying to get better. But then, a colleague mentioned that he was spreading a story that I had bullied and harassed him, that my behavior was the reason he couldn't continue working. I was stunned. I had evidence, emails, meeting notes, even signed documents, proving I had supported him to the fullest, from offering shorter hours to longer breaks, all of which he rejected. He had even once begged to stay under my management when someone suggested moving him elsewhere for health and safety reasons, claiming I was the only one who understood his mental health needs. Yet now, he was accusing me. It dawned on me that he was trying to shift the blame to cover up his mistake, and it made me question whether I had ever truly understood him at all. After over 3 months of him being on sick leave and accusing me of bullying, I received word that he had finally agreed to attend a meeting with me and a support worker from the mental health group he had contacted. I had been anxious for days, preparing documents and evidence to defend myself, but I also tried to stay calm. I wanted to handle this professionally, even though my trust in him had wavered after the security breach and his baseless allegations. The meeting was scheduled for a Wednesday morning, and my boss joined to oversee it. When the meeting began, the atmosphere was tense. He sat across from me, next to the support worker, a middle-aged man with a stern expression. I started by asking about his health, and he gave a vague response about trying to manage. I nodded, keeping my tone neutral, then moved to the main issue, the bullying accusations. I asked for specific examples, but he only mumbled about how his anxiety made him overly sensitive to conversations around him. My boss chimed in, stressing that I couldn't control every word spoken in the office just to please him, and I agreed it was simply impossible. Next, I asked if there was anything I could do to help him return to work. I had prepared a phased return plan with flexible hours, something I'd done for other employees before. But before I could explain, he suddenly pulled a stack of papers from his folder. The support worker sighed and shook his head, as if he'd anticipated this. He announced that he wanted to bring an emotional support cat to the office, an Abyssinian or a Siamese, he hadn't decided yet. I was floored. This was the UK, not a place where such requests were common. I tried to counter logically, mentioning Rufus, the guide dog of a visually impaired colleague everyone adored, and the potential conflict between a dog and a cat. He shot back sharply, insisting it was illegal to favor one disability over another. Undeterred, he went on to present a detailed spreadsheet, brightly colored, listing the costs of buying the cat, food, insurance, and a rota for my team to take turns cleaning up after it. He even suggested that each team member should contribute money based on their income, with me paying the most since I was single and childless. My boss, who had been quiet, leapt from his chair, nearly shouting, "How the hell do you train a cat?" I quickly stepped in, firmly rejecting every cat-related idea. He scowled, but I didn't budge. This office wasn't turning into a zoo. The meeting ended in chaos, leaving me both bewildered and frustrated. After the chaotic meeting about the emotional support cat, I thought things might settle down, but I was wrong. A week passed in silence, not a word from him. I started to think maybe he'd abandoned his bizarre idea and was seriously considering returning to work. But then, as per company procedure, I received a new sick note from him, extending his leave by another 4 weeks. I sighed but still made the required check-in call. When he picked up, his voice dripped with resentment. He was still fuming about what he called my discriminatory anti-cat stance and declared that he wouldn't let this slide easily. I tried to stay calm, asking about his health, but inside, I began to feel uneasy. 2 weeks later, on a morning while I was checking emails in the office, my boss's secretary walked in with a worried look, handing me a thick envelope. I opened it and found a letter that looked very official, printed on letterhead from a local solicitor's office. The contents accused me and the company of violating disability discrimination laws, demanding substantial compensation for refusing reasonable adjustments, specifically not allowing him to bring a cat to work. The language was littered with convoluted legal jargon, sounding like it was lifted straight from an American TV drama, with phrases like severe emotional distress and willful infliction of harm. I almost laughed at the absurdity, but a chill ran down my spine. I read closer and noticed something off. The letterhead looked familiar, but the contact phone number was his personal one, and the address didn't match the solicitor's office I knew in the area. I zoomed in on the logo. It was slightly blurry, as if reprinted from a low-quality scan. Suspicion crept in, so I took the letter to my boss. He'd received an identical one, and after inspecting it, he frowned and muttered, "What the hell is this?" We decided to forward both letters to the company's legal department for investigation. Just a few hours later, a legal staff member called me back. They'd checked and confirmed the letterhead was forged. The phone number and address were his, and the real solicitor's office had no knowledge of the matter. They suspected he'd drafted the letter himself, possibly using editing software to give it a professional appearance. I was stunned by his audacity, but also saddened that he'd go this far just to avoid accountability. The legal team instructed me to have no further contact with him and let them handle it from there. I agreed, but my mind kept racing, wondering what he might try next. After handing over the forged letters to the legal department, I felt a slight sense of relief, trusting that the company would handle the matter thoroughly. I tried to refocus on work, managing the rest of the team and putting the drama he caused behind me. But deep down, I couldn't help wondering how things had escalated from an effort to help into a legal mess. One afternoon, a few days after submitting the letters, I got an internal call from the legal team. The voice on the other end was more serious than usual, making me sit up straight, bracing myself for a new twist. They informed me that after a thorough analysis, not only had they confirmed the letters were fake, but they'd also discovered he'd tried contacting several other employees via personal messages, asking them to act as witnesses to back up his story of mistreatment by me. Fortunately, no one agreed, and a few had forwarded the messages to HR. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. He hadn't just stopped at forging letters, he was now trying to drag others into his scheme. The legal team added that they'd sent him an official warning to cease all harassing behavior, but he hadn't responded. Then came the decisive moment. On a Monday morning, my boss called me into a meeting room. He placed a document on the table, an internal memo from the board. They'd held an emergency meeting over the weekend and decided to terminate his contract with immediate effect. The reasons were clearly listed: a severe security breach, prolonged unexplained sick leave, and deliberate disruptive behavior, including forging legal documents. My boss looked at me and sighed. "I've never seen a case like this in 20 years of management." I nodded, unsure whether to laugh or feel sad. It all ended so abruptly, like a dark comedy I'd unwittingly stumbled into. I asked if there was anything else I needed to do, and my boss told me to leave it to legal from here. They were considering countersuing him for fraudulent behavior, though that depended on whether he kept stirring trouble. As I left the meeting room, I felt an odd emptiness. I'd put so much effort into helping him, from sourcing supportive equipment to being patient with his limitations, only for it to end like this. It was both funny and sad. Funny because of the sheer absurdity of his actions, sad because he never once owned up to his mistakes. I returned to my desk, glanced at the empty chair that used to be his, and told myself this was probably the best way to close this bizarre chapter. I just hoped my team wouldn't have to deal with another character like him anytime soon.